Hello, Wonderhussy here, headed back from a couple-day trip to Death Valley National Park to shoot some videos. I'm on my way home. I already banged out two pretty interesting locations, but before I leave, well, somebody just tipped me off to this random curiosity that happened to be along my way home anyway. And so I figure I'd take advantage of the remaining daylight to go investigate. Okay, so I kind of pulled over at this random spot in the road so I could hike up this random no-name canyon. And no, that's not me just obfuscating. I really think this canyon has no name. It's just some random canyon in some random unnamed part of Death Valley that happens to have something pretty interesting in it, okay? And it's one of those things that we don't like to talk about the exact location of because, you know, a vandal might come mess with it. Even, I guess, the Park Service protects this particular thing. And it's interesting because I tried Googling it every which way from Sunday and I couldn't find anything online about this. So salute and thank you to the people who told me about it. I won't identify you publicly, but you know who you are. Anyway, it's an absolutely beautiful late winter's day in Death Valley. That's right, winter. I mean, you can see I'm wearing a hoodie, despite the fact that I think it was 81 degrees here today. I'm shooting this video on March 20th, which is the last day of winter. The spring equinox is tonight, and normally my sister and I would have a big witchy celebration and we'd put on our priestess outfits. She's got that beautiful sun goddess headdress, and I've got my moon goddess headdress that I made out of knife and spoon handles from the dollar store. There is a big party tonight, sort of near where we live, but my sister has to attend a meeting of the fire board. She's on the fire board and she takes her duties very seriously. She didn't flake out. And so since she's not going to the party, I figure, well, I don't really want to go either. So I'm just celebrating the equinox in my own special way by hiking down this random canyon in Death Valley to the last few rays of the waning winter sun. Godspeed, winter. It was nice knowing you. And that means hello, summer. And well, this is probably the last time I'm going to need to wear this hoodie until mid-November. Anyway, since I'm heading into this canyon, I'm probably not going to get to see the sun dip below the horizon. So I'm just going to say my farewells now and proceed towards this mystery thing. Now, I don't think it's supposed to be very far. A half mile maybe. So it shouldn't be a super long hike, but well, just in case the sun is down, I wanted to go ahead and say goodbye while I had the chance. You know, I don't know how it is where you live. If you live someplace really cold and snowy, then you're probably super happy to see the ass end of winter, and you might even be kicking it in the pants on its way out the door. But for those of us foolhardy enough to live in this harsh desert climate, well, to us, the end of winter is bass backwards, man. It's almost like we're living in the southern hemisphere. Like, our summer is the bad season. That's when people get out ski. And before you know it, that's exactly what's going to happen. Most of the population of the little town where I live is going to either flee, scatter to the winds to more hospitable climes, or retreat into their various dwellings, not to be seen again until mid-November. So it's kind of a bittersweet day. I mean, for me, I consider myself a summer person. You know, Death Valley be damned. I love summertime, which kind of makes me think, am I really a Death Valley person? If I'm a summer person, I don't know that Death Valley is really the place I'm meant to be. Anyway, I better stop yakking and start paying attention because this thing I'm looking for is right around here somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Now, the people who told me about it did send me a photo, and I was smart enough to download the photo so that I would have it way out here in the land with no cell signal. That's right, they call it Death Valley because it's one giant dead zone. Of course, I'm kidding about that part, but I'm not kidding about needing to pay attention to where I'm going so that I can find this thing before the sun really does go down and I'm stuck out here in the dark. Ooh, wouldn't that be spooky to have to spend the night in some random canyon in Death Valley? What I'm looking for is a certain rock. Not that rock. Not that rock. Not any of the rocks I can see right now. I'm looking for a very special rock. One that nobody online wants to talk about. Maybe because nobody online knows anything about it. I mean, that's certainly how it seemed according to my research. There it is. Wow, that was easier than anticipated. Okay, well, you can see that it's a boulder with the name of a white man etched into it. Looks like it says T.A. Jensen, 1862. Wow, what is that? 173 years ago. Well, I guess depending on what month he did it. He didn't put the month. That's probably because it's so difficult to gouge your name into a rock, let alone while you're traveling through a landscape like this. Well, he didn't bother to write the month. Anyway, 173-ish years ago, some dude, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it was probably a dude named T.A. Jensen, was wandering through this random canyon. I mean, I'm going to guess 1862. Well, the Death Valley 49ers infamously passed through what was then called something totally different on their way west because they were following a bad shortcut tip. And I made a whole video about that you can watch. Anyway, the Death Valley 49ers were the first white people to cross through here. And after their harrowing ordeal and the way they rebranded it Death Valley, no settlers were really passing through here. So it could only have been a prospector, because even though, you know, God-fearing settler folk weren't trying to pass through Death Valley anymore, there were still plenty of white dudes coming down here to prospect for sweet, juicy ore. That's right, no telling what kinds of treasure these canyons hold. Gold, silver, lead, zinc. I mean, yeah, sure, gold was the gold standard for what a prospector hoped to find, but silver was pretty good too, and I think there's even some money in lead, zinc, tin. I don't know if they ever found any tin in Death Valley, but whatever this dude was looking for, he passed through this canyon and stopped long enough to etch his name into this rock, which is amazing that it's been there since 1862, 173 years. You can see it's still readable, clear as day, unlike other inscriptions I've seen. But it's amazing that this boulder is still sitting right where it is, because we are in this canyon, this boulder-strewn canyon that looks like flash floods come rip-roaring down through here in the monsoon season, just carrying giant chunks along with it. So the fact that this boulder here is still sitting just the way it was back in 1862 is pretty dang impressive. And I'm not going to touch it because I don't want the oils from my fingers to degrade these letters that have been sitting here for 173 years. But well, that's what they say about petroglyphs anyway. I don't know how the Park Service feels about inscriptions made by the white man, even if they are 173 years old. I'm not sure if the same standards apply, but to me, I think this is just as interesting as petroglyphs, and so I'm not going to touch it and deface it or degrade it. But man, I kind of want to put my hand on it because it's like a real, talk about a connection with the past. I mean, I can kind of put myself in the shoes of this dude in this canyon 173 years ago. In fact, let's all do that. One final imagination exercise for the winter of 2025. Okay, it's 1862. Put yourself way back in 1862. 1862. What are you wearing? Suspenders. You probably have a beard. Ladies, you're probably wearing interminable layers of complicated clothing with hooks and laces and shoes with a million little eyelets that... Oh man, I'm so glad I didn't live back then. Okay, so you're all duded up in your 1862 clothes, smelling like you would have smelled in Death Valley in 1862, which probably wasn't very good. Standing here in this canyon, I guess maybe he just took a break. Maybe he was taking a lunch break. And maybe he looked around just like we're looking around. Back down the mouth of the canyon, which is probably the way he came, just like we did. In fact, I'm going to sit right here on this rock, which is probably the same rock this dude did actually sit on. Isn't that funny? Maybe he took a lunch break. What do you suppose he was eating for lunch? Well, he's passing through Death Valley, traveling through Death Valley in 1862. There weren't any towns out here that I can think of in this part of Death Valley anywhere near. So, gosh, he'd probably been traveling for a while. I don't even know if Las Vegas must have at least been a settlement in 1862. If he had to come from as far away as Vegas, whew, he was in desperate need of resupply. So if he had anything with him, it was probably just some strips of jerky and some hardtack, something like that. Or maybe something he caught along the way. You know, he shot a rabbit or something and kept a little bit to eat for lunch. Oh. Again, I'm so glad I didn't live back in those days. At least not in this part of the country. Anyway, here we are, enjoying our lunch. I guess maybe thinking about where we're going. I mean, where we're going in general. Sounds like this dude was just on the loose. I mean, maybe he was trying to get to California to prospect for gold. But if he was, then why wouldn't he have just followed the regular California trail? That doesn't make sense. And again, I did try looking up T.A. Jensen, 1862. I couldn't find anything online. So I legitimately have no idea who this dude was. So everything that I'm imagining is pure imagination, just like Willy Wonka. Okay, so I got distracted thinking about Willy Wonka. Yeah, we're sitting in this canyon, eating our hardtack, and maybe we're just looking for a place to camp for the night. I mean, if we're out here prospecting, which seems more likely than some guy trying to get to California. I mean, we are way far away from the established and accepted routes to California, the overland routes. And after the whole 49ers story, I'm pretty sure nobody in their right mind would cross Death Valley as a means of just getting to California. You had to be here for a reason. So he was probably out here looking for one of these mysterious lost mines. In fact, there was a bunch of them, but the lost gun sight mine was one that one of the members of the Death Valley 49ers supposedly found a big chunk of silver ore on the ground, but he was in such a life or death ordeal to get out of here. They didn't have time to poke around. Well, he always wanted to come back and look for that silver deposit, but he couldn't find it. Again, one of those kind of deals, the lost gun sight mine. Maybe T.A. Jensen was out here looking for the lost gun sight mine. Or wasn't there like a Brayfogle mine? I don't know. I feel like there's a couple different mines in Death Valley that supposedly had a bunch of gold or silver, and the guy that found them like couldn't remember how to get back there, and so nobody ever found him. I'll bet you anything this T.A. Jensen was some dude from back east. In fact, he was probably like the younger son of some farmer who was going to leave everything on the farm to the oldest son. And so the younger son figured, why not head west? Adventure. You know, maybe he'll strike it rich. If he doesn't find a gold deposit in Death Valley, well, maybe he'll just keep pushing on to the rest of California and find something up near Sacramento way. Either way, this dude was probably out for adventure. And so he was probably having the time of his life. You know, the more I think about this guy, the more I think I probably would have gotten along with him. Boy, T.A. Jensen coming alive out of the mists of history. Isn't that interesting to where if you just really start thinking about something as innocuous as an inscription, we don't even have his full name. All we have is his first initials, his last name, and the year that he wrote this. But we can paint a pretty realistic picture of what this dude's life was like. I'm not kidding. I'll bet you... Well, I don't know what I'll bet you this rock right here that I'm right. And if I'm wrong, well, you're just gonna have to hike out here and pick it up for yourself, because I'm not stealing anything from a national park. It's a big no-no to take anything, even a worthless rock, which I don't know anything about geology. Maybe this is a piece of some kind of super valuable ore, and I did stumble on the lost gun sight mine. I doubt it. I'm just saying, you never know. Just like we'll probably never know who T.A. Jensen really was. He's gonna have to remain a mystery. And while that is kind of frustrating to me, I also think it's kind of cool. I talked about this in another video I made that I think I called the not knowing. You know, nowadays in this age of internet and Starlink, we can find the answers to any conundrum, no matter what. Except for in certain places like this, where there is no cell signal, and you probably couldn't even really get a Starlink signal in this canyon because it's pretty narrow. It would block them. So in a way, this canyon is kind of a sacred place. It's one of the few places in this hurly-burly world where we don't have the answers. And that's what's really special about this rock is even when I do go back to a place where I could potentially have the answers, there are no answers. I don't know if anybody knows who this dude was, and if you do, please email me as much as I go on and on about enjoying the not knowing. I think I actually enjoy the knowing a little bit more. But don't post it publicly in the comments because I don't want to get in trouble for giving away the location to this place or anything like that. But email me and let me know because I am pretty damn curious, especially after all this speculation. Well, whoever you were, T.A. Jensen, if indeed that was your real name, what if he put a fake name to throw the law off his trail? What if he was a desperado hiding out from the law? No, I don't think there was any law out here in 1862. Whoever you were, T.A. Jensen, if your spirit happens to be watching this video, thank you for sharing the last gentle rays of the sun of winter 2025 with me. Ah, look at that. The sun is still above the horizon at the entrance to this canyon, which means I have a few more moments to bask in the winter of 2025. I don't know how the winter was for you. For me personally, it was, well, I wouldn't quite call it the winter of my discontent. I would call that the winter of 2022. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. And I, for one, am looking forward to spring. That's right. It's almost spring. And by the time you watch this video, it will be spring. Spring has sprung. Happy spring, everyone. Okay, while those of us in Death Valley might not be too stoked on summer, we do love the spring. So here's hoping spring 25 is a good one for all of us.